We're back with a vengeance. Perhaps, for once in your life, you could desist from being a fucking knob jockey. Oh, clearly not. Oh, Jesus. See, what if my elbow had gone, whoop, then?
I would be in pain. It would depend if you hit the drink. Do you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hello Internet, I'm Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And welcome to Breaking Bollocks episode 41.
I think so.
Jesus, we're getting old.
We're back with a vengeance.
Yeah, this is, it's not my first recording since I went away to Prague, but it's,
Isn't it? You did a game, didn't you?
did Antichamber.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the thing.
Hello again, people.
Go listen to his podcast if you want to hear about me going to Prague. There we go, cross-promotion.
It'll be out on the Monday following this one going out.
Yeah. Anyway, news.
Yeah, that's called Better Call Paul.
News.
Boris Johnson's a cock.
Well, we already know. Oh, yeah.
He's extending stop and search powers.
Yeah.
Wonder how long it'll be before the riots start.
Well, when's October 31st? Couple of months.
It's the day after October the 30th. On Halloween, actually.
No shit, Sherlock. Oh yeah, this is not really entertaining, I suppose, but
That's our podcast for you.
Should have read. Whoa, don't burn now.
What?
Criticising us.
Self-flagellation.
No, that sounds kinky. Anyway, mass shootings in America, because they're always happening in America, but this time it got more attention because two happened quite close together. That, again, people are blaming video games, like Walmart's taking down signing for that, but they're still selling guns quite openly. No
Kinder Eggs, though.
Oh yeah, Kinder Egg is still banned, but handguns, they're fine. It's not even that I would necessarily be behind a total ban on guns, it's just like, who in their right mind needs an assault weapon?
Somebody who's going to assault people, I suppose.
Yeah, you only need an assault weapon if you're going to kill lots of people. If you need an AR-15 to shoot fucking Bambi, then you're a bad hunter.
Yeah.
It can hold 100 bullets. You don't need that much for everyday life.
I think that second one as well, was it Ohio was one of them? Was that the second one or the first one?
I'm not sure which order they went in.
Anyway.
Dayton, Ohio wasn't the one where the shooter had a manifesto, I don't think.
No, I think it was either just sort of 6 or 9 people were killed, was it? But they were saying that the only reason that it wasn't a hell of a lot worse was because the police just happened to be nearby at the time.
Yeah.
So I suppose they were lucky in that respect, but you know.
And still, when we ask why doesn't this happen in any other country where we still got the same video games, it's just sort of, maybe because we have decent gun laws.
Yeah, but we seem to be really good at pissing off Americans on this program.
Yeah, but whatever. America's kind of broken in many ways.
Yes.
But I'm not saying the UK isn't broken, I'm just saying,
It very soon will be.
everything that we're worried about happening to the UK in a no-deal Brexit is basically it becoming America.
Yeah, they have lower taxes.
That's about... I mean, even then, sort of like...
That's not necessarily a good thing, though. They don't have an NHS, so...
and don't have a decent public education system. And I don't think the benefit system is going to be great either, to be honest.
And teachers don't get paid a huge amount, do they, over there?
No.
If Walt Whitman's anything to go by. Walter White, sorry.
Okay.
Reference our namesake.
Yeah, I was a bit confused there because Walt Whitman's a poet.
He was the one that wrote the book that he
Yeah.
had, though, wasn't he? Yeah. Go watch Breaking Bad if you haven't already. Shame on you.
And whilst mental health and ideology and bullying are all factors in this, the thing that all mass shootings have in common is easy access to a gun.
There's been a typhoon in China.
Oh, has there?
And it prompted me to look up the difference between typhoons and hurricanes.
Do you know what it is?
Literally, if it's in the north, south, east. If it's in the northwestern, if it starts in the northwestern or northern Pacific, it's a typhoon. Anywhere else on the planet, like the South Pacific or the Atlantic, it's a hurricane. But it's exactly the same thing. They are forms of cyclonic depression. They're basically cyclonic systems. But they just have
depression sounds
they just have a different name for some reason. I didn't see any references to why, but if they're in that part of the planet, they're called typhoons, and anywhere else they're called hurricanes.
Yeah, I think they have a different naming system as well.
Well, like typhoon,
well, just gonna glaze over that really racist bit. But,
it's not racist.
It's not really racist, it's slightly racist.
Yeah, it's just taking the piss. It's not because they're Chinese that I'm taking the piss. I'll just take the piss out of people.
Okay, yeah, but you don't do that the same for most other languages, do you?
Yeah, I can do. Scheisse! I was doing it earlier. Jawohl!
But you don't even know what that means.
No,
I suppose you don't know what that...
Do you think I know?
No, because it probably
that means.
Doesn't mean anything.
Unless I just swore and offended somebody's grandma in outer Chinpong La.
At least you know the Chinese cities.
Oh no, that's not Chinese, is it?
Well, it is technically.
Yet.
It is.
What, Hong Kong?
Yeah, it's technically.
Is it though? They're kind of they have their own kind of sovereignty, kind of.
It's the most country-like country that isn't a country.
Okay.
It's like the opposite of the Vatican.
Is it a city?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a city-state, but...
Singapore's similar, isn't it? In that sense.
Well, Singapore's sovereign.
Yeah.
And that is a city-state as well, yes.
Because I remember him talking about London possibly being able to... one of the solutions to the Brexit debacle was for London to join with Scotland and become a city-state or something. Or not join with Scotland, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Just build a wall around London.
There was an interesting article I read actually last week about this guy. I can't remember which paper it was in or what this guy was an expert in, but he was a political commentator. I think he was at some university doing political history or something. But he basically pointed out that actually Sinn Féin could rescue the UK from Brexit.
Yeah. Well,
not by taking their seats, because they would never do that, because it would be... well, it's just something that they wouldn't do. But the idea was that if they had an agreement in principle to hand over their seats in Northern Ireland temporarily to neutral representatives who would then hand back their seats afterwards, all they would lose is a little bit of money from the parliamentary process sort of thing, but they could basically change the direction of the political direction of the UK, so Sinn Féin would actually be in control of the United Kingdom, essentially, on that matter.
Brexit kind of does quite heavily violate the Good Friday Agreement, especially if it's a no-deal Brexit.
Yeah.
Just sort of brush over that because
so much potential for all kinds of chaos to break loose at the moment.
The Troubles were just fine, weren't they?
I mean, the random stop and search powers being given back to the police. The Northern Ireland shite. Potato.
Okay. Right, so you do it for every language then.
Oh, aye. Okay, the new.
Okay.
Oh, that's the other thing as well. I see that finally the euro and the pound are practically equivalent to each other.
That's fun.
So, yeah, there was a few humorous articles about Brexit, thanking Brexiteers for finally enabling us to effectively join the euro. It was year 2000. It was £1.76. No, €1.76 that the pound was worth. It's now, well, yesterday it was worth €1.06.
In terms of UK politics, it feels like
we're fucked.
We've got like one of the worst cabinets in history, as far as I'm aware, with several people that have
it's just going to be interesting to see
been charged with crimes.
The direction that things are going to go will be, I think, very clearly influenced and defined over the couple of months, well, the rest of this year, basically. Because you can pretty much guarantee when Parliament opens again after their summer recess, beginning of September, that they're pretty much immediately going to cast a vote of no confidence.
I hope so, but like, what happens after that? They've got very little time for a general election.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Because if you don't know, I think is it 6 weeks?
It's just a fucking mess. It's just a fucking mess.
Yeah.
One would hope that they can delay it, but at the same time, that's us as Remainers saying that. Because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be mightily pissed off if they do delay it again.
Yeah, but there's going to be a lot of people mightily pissed off whatever happens because
the UK's broken. We're fucked.
And we'll get onto this on our main subject. There's been so much fucking lies drummed up.
This brings me to something that I've recommended that we watch. We need to watch The Great Hack on Netflix.
What's that?
It's a documentary, and it's a documentary film all about the truth behind the whole Cambridge Analytica kind of not that specific scandal, but the way that the world of information has been weaponized, and is now a commodity which is more valuable than gold or oil.
We're still in the Cold War,
and the way that we're being manipulated using our information.
We're still in a Cold War. It's just now being fought online,
and a lot of the program uses a lot of the people that were that have been involved in that kind of data industry, if you like. I've noticed I say that a lot, and it really annoys me, and I'm really sorry.
What?
I just say "if you like" a lot. If you like. I'm gonna laugh over Theo.
They appointed Dominic Cummings.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can have Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, fucking Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Did you see our local guy, Arnold Clark? Not Arnold Clark. What's his name? Our local MP, Colin. I knew it was
so forgettable.
He's a cock. I played at a wedding he was at once. If I'd have known it, if it was now, I'd be like, look, sod the money. I'm just going to call him a dick. Because we do change the lyrics in Sweet Home Alabama. Or, well, John does. Every time it's sung, says, instead of whatever it's supposed to be, it says something about don't like Boris Johnson. And it used to be Theresa May. Theresa May really bothers me or something. I can't remember what the words are, but it basically...
Yeah, it's Watergate doesn't bother me.
Yeah, well, he changes it now to Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think.
Mm.
But it is worrying, very worrying. But none of these people have any connection with the world that most of the population inhabit.
No.
They don't have any experience with what most of us...
I mean, there are members of the cabinet that do. It's just... they're still shitbags.
Yeah. I want an indie ref too. I'm not ashamed to say it. It's not going to solve the whole issue, but the politics of south of the border and Westminster now...
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that I've always been against, but they're a lot further removed from my ethics now than they ever have been. Even I don't think back in the 80s I was this worried about.
I think I said it 2 episodes ago. My politics just align more with Europe.
Yeah.
Like of mainland Europe than...
And Scotland in general is more of that same kind of mindset as well. It's up here. It's certainly more kind of, I don't know, seem to be more aligned with. Well, it's not just Europe. They seem to have quite a Scandinavian kind of outlook.
In some ways, yeah.
But progressive, I think, is the best description. Anyway, have we got any more news to cover?
Well, I did want to go over the mass shootings because it kind of felt like we just sort of...
You wanted to go over them? Well, is there anything specific apart from what we normally say? Because we always have a rant about the gun laws, and nothing ever seems to change. I don't want to kind of...
It's important to make sure that this doesn't become normal, though, even though...
It already is.
Yeah, but it's important to still call it out and repeat it, because it only happens in America.
Yeah. And to be clear, it has happened in other countries who had similar gun laws, and as soon as they changed those gun laws, it stopped happening.
And you can argue about knife crime rates, but still, the murder rate in the US is much higher, like 5 times higher than that of, say, Sweden.
But it's difficult. The thing is, it's difficult to argue a point based on an ethical ideology or a moral ideology with somebody who doesn't actually understand your way of thinking, that doesn't share your concern for other people's welfare, doesn't agree with you that it's not a God-given right to bear arms. How do you hold that debate with somebody who fundamentally disagrees with your point of view? You might have the value of lives on your side, but that's only in your mind. Some people are just shitheads who don't care.
I think people do care.
A lot of people do, yeah, and they're the ones that have to tolerate the people who don't.
I don't know. I think America also seems to have this weird lack of self-awareness, I think. Like a lot of Americans think America's the best place in the world to live.
Do you know what it reminds me of,
despite
actually?
The data showing contrary.
I've lived in some small, isolated communities where there was a village I lived in Northampton called Raunds, which must have been only a few thousand people lived there. And I knew people who were, or I'd met people who were in their 70s and had never been out of Raunds, this village.
Yeah.
And there is with a lot of sort of isolated communities, there is that very much kind of inward looking kind of, and it's almost like it's the biggest version of that on the planet. It's kind of,
I guess it's just sort of, that the best country in the world thing, but like, if you actually read, I don't know, any data, it's you
guys that think that, not anyone else.
It's not a bad place to live. There are serious problems, but there are a lot worse places to live. But it's certainly by no stretch of the imagination the best place to live. And I don't like this constant thing.
Again, I think it probably worries, depends. That's nothing like wondering or worrying.
Right.
Depends on your mindset. If you are what we think of as your typical kind of gung-ho American kind of, we are the greatest, we are the best country on the... If you've got that mindset, it's kind of, to you are. To them, it's true, and it's not...
Even on freedom, which is meant to be the big thing about America, it's like, there might be high gun rate, deaths, whatever, and we might not have very good education, but we're free. But on freedom, I think they ranked like 34th or something.
Well, this is something that I've often been interested in, is wondering about how the rest of the world sees the country you live in, because you only see it from the inside.
Well, this is why I think shows where you have like outsiders hosting it, I get not outsiders in a nasty way, but people that can look on it from the outside.
Mm.
So like hearing on the last leg, Adam Hills talking about the UK because he's Australian.
Yeah.
And whilst Australia does have some similarities with the UK because of a very nasty history.
Yeah.
Or hearing Henning Wing.
Well, there's
a German comedian.
The same thing's happening a little bit in America, though, now, isn't it? Because you've got people like, what's his name, John Oliver.
Yeah.
And the other guy.
Noah.
Yeah. But it does seem quite divided, because there do seem to be some shows and some media outlets that get it right from what we would consider to be a good viewpoint. But are they the ones that... Is it a bit like that kind of bubble situation where only the people who agree with it would watch it?
I do like to be cautious on whether I'm being biased, but at some points I'm just like, should I really give a shit? Because the data still supports my view, whether or not that happens to be a left-wing view.
Yeah, I suppose there comes a point where you think, well, the Earth wasn't created in 7 days. The data supports that, but I shouldn't give the same level of respect to somebody who believes...
It's sort of like the worrying, and we'll get to this in our main subject, the thing about climate change, worrying, we got to have a balance in, so you'll always get a climate denier on with a climate scientist. The climate denier...
I feel like we can...
represents a minority of scientists if they are a scientist, and if they're not, why the fuck are they there?
I feel like we can kind of gradually slide into our subject this week, because it's kind of happening already to a certain extent.
Okay, going back to the El Paso shooting specifically, again...
Was that the first one?
I'm not sure which order they happened.
I think it was. That's Texas, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was a bigger one, yeah. About 30 odd people.
The one where Trump took a photo with an orphan smiling and having his thumbs up. Because the parents managed to shield their baby whilst they were being shot. Yeah,
it's like he's kind of been lucky enough to find the golden happy toy in the Happy Meal or something. It's just not...
It's a worrying lack of empathy in the face of a tragedy.
Totally removed from what has actually happened.
It's the only person that can make George Bush seem like a good fucking president.
No.
But specifically... This is another case where the shooter had a manifesto, and several phrases were lifted right off of Fox News and Trump's Twitter feed, and I think he did actually mention Trump talking in it. I'd look up to see, so I'm not missing.
One of the things I find difficult is, I mean, it's clearly happening, but it's almost like it's happening somewhere else in a different time, all of this stuff, even in our own country.
Yeah, it's easy to become...
You just think it's like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
You've heard about things like this happening in history, and you don't... you think, well, it was a different time. And it's like that different time is now to a certain extent. But people would like to convince you that you're just being overdramatic about the situation.
But I think the thing is that it's not pleasant thinking about tragedies like this. When I heard just the names of those parents that shielded their baby.
Yeah.
It made me cry just instantly.
Right.
I'm thinking about everyone's terror during that.
Yeah.
It's just fucking horrible.
I must admit, and it's probably, well, I think it's out of proportion, not necessarily completely unjustified, but certainly not to the level that I worried about it. When we went on holiday to Turkey, the reason that we chose that destination, it was a last-minute booking. This was, how long ago? About 2-3 years, was it? The reason it was so cheap was because nobody would go there because it was right next door to Syria, basically. Well, not nobody, but there were a lot of people that wouldn't visit, so that their tourist industry was kind of having problems. And quite a lot on the build-up to that, to go in there, I had this scenario in my head of... It doesn't bear thinking about, but just the thought of, I mean, you get the things like the suicide bomber at the Manchester Arena thing happening. You, things like that go through your head. You think, what must it have been like? Because, and I've been in situations where things have happened that don't normally happen, and there's a shock factor involved. You don't quite believe what's going on. You know, like if you witness a traffic accident or something like that, it doesn't register until afterwards. Because everything's just kind of surreal when something that... But to imagine finding yourself in a situation where you suddenly realise that there is a bomb near you, and it's about to go off. How does that feel? You know,
video from a guy that I think it was a guy that went to grab as many children as he could to get them away. I'm not sure which shooting it was. And I think before then he filmed a little bit, and he was just in total shock, just completely not reacting. You could hear the gunshots in the background, just like, I just saw 5 people got shot.
Yeah, because
like wandering around looking completely...
Yeah, it doesn't hit you. I mean, I've been in situations where there's been a real risk that something like that could be happening, like back in the 80s when the Northern Ireland stuff was still pretty rife, and I'd be in London and there'd be a bomb scare, and you'd be in an underground station and it'd get evacuated, and all the time that you're leaving, you're quickly moving to the exit and you're doing all the things you should. You're not panicking, but deep down you know that at any moment that could be it. Could just be all over, and it's things happen, but why enable so many people to become potentially the next statistic?
Yeah.
When you don't have to, when there's no need for it. In the name of what? In the name of, like you said, don't necessarily ban all guns, but why give somebody 100 bullets in one...
In the UK, guns aren't illegal. You just have to have... Well, first of all, you're not allowed to have it if you have a mental illness. If you've had a history of going to prison. And I know it's how it's done in Germany, because I've seen someone posting about it. I'm not sure if the same's in the UK. You have to have a reason for it. So like hunting. Yeah.
See, when I used to work at the airport delivering lost luggage, we'd quite regularly we'd have somebody whose gun or ammunition had been delayed, and we were responsible for delivering that to them later. We had to have a special license from the security department at the airport. There were all sorts of things that we had to guarantee. The gun itself couldn't travel in the same vehicle with the ammunition. It couldn't be left unaccompanied at any time. So you had to make sure you had to prove that you had a full tank of petrol before you left the airport, because you couldn't stop to fill up. You're not allowed to leave the vehicle. So that had to be the first stop on every run that we did with them. They had to be kept in locked, secured storage units by the airline themselves until we came over. We had to have photocopies of the passports of the people that they belonged to, and we weren't allowed to hand over that weapon to that person until we'd seen them and their passport. And you just think, how would they view that in America? That level of security.
Yeah, but it's reasonable safety precautions.
Mm.
I don't think they've actually got the full manifesto here. I'm not sure. There's probably some legal implications to that, but it has got little excerpts here. That they supported the New Zealand shooter as well.
This is the Washington Examiner.
Yeah.
So basically that's...
Hispanic invasion of Texas. Invasion has repeatedly been used by Trump to describe asylum seekers crossing the border. And you can say all you like, oh, but I'm fine with immigrants if they crossed legally, but if you've actually looked at the process for immigrating into America, it's grueling.
Yeah.
I saw from someone whose brother, they'd applied for their brother to come into the country 23 years ago, and they'd just died, and then they just got mail saying that they were ready to come for an interview.
Right. I don't understand this whole thing where the kids get separated from their families as well. And
Yeah.
you know, they're kept in the... It doesn't seem real. You know, you read about these conditions in history and you think, you know, that doesn't happen now, but it seems to be happening and it doesn't seem real.
But
according to the reports, which brings us on to our subject.
yeah. Can we just go over this quickly? Because
it would have to be, because we're nearly 35 minutes into the podcast and we haven't started the subject.
Okay. Well, you can fucking read a title. The subject of the podcast is journalism. Talking about replacing indigenous populations and stuff like that, but just isn't really happening. And if it is, it's just sort of like, the thing that I don't get is, and I think a lot of people have this as just a really problematic part, that they just accept that they should care more about someone born in their own country that they don't know, that has no influence on their life, than they should have on someone born in another country that has that they don't know, that they have no influence
this whole
on their life.
We should be looking after our own first kind of mentality.
Yeah, that is just blatant racism, and it seems to be just a sort of, I guess, just accepted thing by a lot of people, that they should care more about people within their own country, because we definitely care more when terrorist attacks happen in our own country.
Yeah.
Even if it's nowhere near us.
Is that care, or is it more concern because it's nearer to home and more of a potential threat to us? Then it reminds us that it can happen here.
I guess it does get more coverage here, but, you know, similar terror attacks happen every day in somewhere like Syria.
I suppose there's a bit of a kind of, what is the normal state of life in the place that something happens?
Yeah, but this shouldn't be normal.
No, absolutely
We have
not.
to keep making it clear this shouldn't be normal.
No.
It's like when Boris Johnson got in. Like, for several days, I was just sort of half laughing about it, because it's just like, this can't really be happening. Is it happening?
I think there's an incorrect misconception as well, that somewhere like Syria has always been as troubled as it is now.
No, well, I've done research on it in the past, and the Civil War only started in 2011.
Yeah, or you know, places like Baghdad and Iraq and anywhere over in that area. There's an assumption that because during my whole life there has been unrest in the Middle East, there's an incorrect assumption, I think, that a lot of people think that that's just the way things are there and always have been.
Yeah, I
But
guess, but
it's not that way. That there were great civilizations over there, very stable and long-lived civilizations over there, which, when we were still living in sort of mud huts here, there was stuff going on there that has fallen since then.
Yeah.
We were relatively primitive when they had a great civilization going, So it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, it's just sort of just a lack of care, really.
I think sometimes as well, when you see the pictures on TV, you see some of these places where there's been bombings or attacks.
Ideally, if you're really thinking about the world and the state it's in, you would be depressed all the time. Because just thinking, if there was famine in the UK, imagining that it didn't affect you or people that you knew and loved, then you'd think, well, it's kind of, isn't there? Because loads of homelessness and...
There's food banks now, which until relatively recently weren't a thing. They weren't a thing. And I notice as well that mention has already been made recently of the possibility of food rationing after Brexit here.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I don't get about that as well is a lot of people are talking about, like, oh, we made it through the war. First of all,
it was a war.
Most of the people saying that didn't. So that's that.
The other point is we didn't actually vote for the bombs to rain down from the sky.
You would bet in World War II, if you found that half of the country had voted to go to war with Germany, or to have Germany go to war with it, because there's no necessity for this. Whilst the EU does have problems, we're still definitely better in it. Most of the experts agree on this. You can argue all you want about democracy, but when it comes to actual benefits that the UK gets, beyond some I'm tired old symbolism.
I'm pretty cynical about the term democracy as it is nowadays, as it seems to be bandied about, because it's a bit like, to me, it seems to go hand in hand with capitalism in today's terminology, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's not really. They don't really fit that well together.
Capitalism is plutocratic.
What does that mean?
I think it's the power of wealth or power of money.
Yeah. And that's...
Because not everyone can afford to have it. Characterised by government by the wealthy. So basically what we're in right now. Look at all the eaten twats in our government.
But it does... I suppose the difficulty is when information is the thing that's been weaponised, and there is so much data out there, which means you can target with what is essentially propaganda. You can target people specifically down to the person based on how likely they are to actually be swayed by what you're saying to them.
And this is what Cambridge Analytica did.
I mean, back in the sort of war days, if you like, I say it again, there were these posters that was like, your country needs you and all this, and it was a blanket kind of just trying to raise the kind of general. But these days, you are targeted individually for what you.
And I think a lot of it, I think you have said this, is this idea that, I wouldn't be swayed by that. Well,
everybody likes to think they have their own free will.
Yeah, but we're getting into the reality thing about the Matrix again.
Well, the Matrix is as much, even if you don't think of being in a virtual reality program or a holographic universe or anything like that, it's a system. The Matrix is a system that you live under. You live within. In terms of where we are now, you could say the Matrix is society.
But I think the thing is, as always in politics, follow the money and you'll find out where the corruption lies. Because it tends to be really wealthy donors supporting the people that would benefit them the most.
I just don't understand what they get out of it.
The donors.
Yeah.
They get tax cuts.
Yeah, some money. So, but
they get more power.
But why does that make somebody happy?
Well, would you be happier in a mansion or in a council flat?
It would depend. It would very much depend.
No, in the council flat...
We live in a council house. I would be happier in this than I would be in a mansion, unless I had... Well, it wouldn't be me.
Things. Here's the thing. Whilst money doesn't make you happy on its own, it damn well helps.
Yeah, but if you've got enough...
It removes obstacles.
These people are obviously incredibly wealthy.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, Bezos could solve world hunger and still have billions left.
But is he happy?
I don't know. His wife divorced him recently, which makes her the richest woman on the planet because she got half his money.
So I've got a more successful marriage than him then.
I guess, yeah, but I'm going to guess that...
He doesn't care.
Yeah. Well, you think of all the stuff that annoys you when you see something in the news, and you're just like, I wish I could do something about that. He can. He can snap his fingers and basically make anything he wants happen.
I don't understand how that makes somebody happy, though.
Well,
it's a hell of a lot of responsibility.
In the hands of a conscientious person, maybe it wouldn't make you happy. But given that Jeff Bezos has plenty of money to give and he still doesn't, and he still treats his workers like shit and takes a lot of the money for himself, he clearly isn't someone that's particularly worried or morally concerned.
But the big decider for me is when it's all over, if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you're on your deathbed, you're about to die in peace, you've got your last day on this planet, and you think about everything you've done and the reasons you've done it. Are you happy with what you've done with your life? That to me is the big decider, if you like.
He has a fucking space program. He's probably happy with what he's done with his life. If you had a fucking space program,
but you said he treats his workers like shit.
He doesn't care because he's probably a fucking psychopath like most CEOs.
But that's my point. A space program doesn't matter if you can't treat people well.
Well, it wouldn't matter to someone. Here's the thing. He could still afford to pay for that and still be really rich.
Pay for what? Making his workers happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so why doesn't
world hunger.
So why doesn't he? Because that's more important.
Or I don't think he could quite pay off student debt in America.
No.
Because that's fucking ludicrous.
But that's going to make more of a difference than having a space program to the human race as a whole. And if he's chosen not to do that, then, you know...
Yeah, but it's big and it's shaped like a dick.
You know what I mean, though. It's like, I think they're all fooling themselves. I mean, even Boris Johnson, it's like, come on. Is that power really making you fulfilled with when you look in the mirror at night, Boris, if you're watching or listening? Are you really happy with what you see looking back at you?
Well, either he's fine with it or he just doesn't know how to be nice or good.
Some people just don't care, do they?
Yeah, well, that's the point. But
maybe we're nasty. I mean, if these people are listening, they could be on the point of thinking, "Oh God, I'm going to give up on it all. He's right. My life's not worth anything." We're being quite nasty to people.
They have billions of pounds that they could use to
Boris
save...
Johnson doesn't have billions of pounds.
Yes, he fucking does.
Does he? I don't.
He at least has millions.
Yeah, but that's an order of magnitude less than billions.
Fine, but it's still really fucking rich.
That's like that woman the other day saying that the people in Africa live millions of miles away on Facebook. What's he got? Let's go ransack his treasury.
No, not the fucking Express. I don't. Wage indicator, that's probably more reliable.
Journalism. He makes £607.69 a day.
Yeah.
Mm. I've had days where I've made more than that. They're one-offs, though.
Okay, so he's a fairly average politician.
That's like every day, isn't it? That's his average. £158,000.
He's not actually that rich, but he's still very powerful.
The thing is, as well, you got to think. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but everything that you earn over, I think it's about 50 grand, is taxed 50%. So that his annual income is 158 grand. He'll be losing immediately. He'll be losing 54 grand of that in tax, just on his higher rate taxes.
He still has more than us.
He's gonna have less than 100 grand a year.
Oh, boo-hoo, you have less than £100,000.
But the thing is, he won't be having to pay for a lot of the stuff that we have to pay for. Like, he'll be getting all his food free. He'll be getting all his travel paid for.
House is paid for by the state.
Yeah.
I
mean, this is disposable income, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a lot of
Prime
hookers.
Minister.
You'd have thought he could afford a decent haircut.
Maybe he likes it that way. They
I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was designed.
Oh, possibly.
Yeah.
But, like, unassuming.
Yeah. He pocket... What?
£250 a year for his weekly column in the Telegraph.
Yeah. 250,000. That's £250,000. Did you said £250?
250,000, I think.
All right, okay. He was born in America. I didn't know that. Don't you have to be born in America to be a president?
I think you do.
Yeah. Oh, he could be president then. Maybe he is. Have you ever seen him and Trump together in the same room?
I think you would notice.
He looks like a cross between Donald Trump and Ed Sheeran.
Journalism. The thing is, they keep... and this is the thing that you seem to be falling for as well. They keep framing it like rich people are the real victims here. They'll still have
What made you think that? What made you think I think that way?
Because you said, we're being mean to billionaires.
Yeah, I know. I was being ironic, though. It's like, fuck them.
It's hard to tell because some people genuinely take that stance.
All right. Yeah. I'm not one of them. You can all go to fuck.
But I have heard you sort of echo.
I'm sure there are people with lots of money that are nice people and do good things with it. I mean, I don't know if it's spin and stuff, but I've heard of a lot of stuff that Bill Gates does for charity with his millions and billions of pounds and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything.
I have heard some bad stuff. I think he's generally a decent guy.
I don't necessarily have anything against somebody, say, like who's that really eccentric billionaire with
Elon
the SpaceX?
Musk.
Yeah, who might specialize in, say, a space program. But the idea of having workers who are treated like shit is the thing that bothers me. It's fine to specialise in something that you're passionate about, and there have to be people that do that.
The thing is,
you can't concentrate on solving the world's problems.
There's nothing forcing these people to, in a lot of countries, to treat their workers nicely.
We should get onto journalism, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Right, the journal. What is a journal? It's essentially a diary, isn't it?
We don't have to start from the bottom.
Yes, we do.
Why?
Because I'm defining what journalism should be. It's writing about things that have happened.
Really, a lot of stuff counts as journalism if you use that sort of definition.
Yeah, well, I do, and I think what a lot of so-called journalists do nowadays could be well improved by them taking on the same view of it, rather than, because there's a difference between editorial sort of opinion and straight up just reporting on an event, isn't there?
Yeah.
And there always seems to be a bias. Well, not always, but a lot of media seems to have a bias.
Fair enough.
I've got a lot of respect, actually, for the kind of journalists who risk life and limb, say, going into war zones.
Yeah, particularly going into dangerous places. See, the sort of journalism that I quite like, and it's quite rare nowadays, and I know a lot of people accuse Vox and Vice of being really biased and left-leaning, and just sort of like, meh.
Who?
They're journalist
Right.
companies, basically.
Right.
They do a lot of really interesting exposés, and Vox, I think, more looks at how the internet works, kind of. Not sure, they might be owned by the same people as Wired. But I think they're a sort of... I think they might be connected by the same parent company.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of Wired. I mean, see, the big guns I would think of as somebody like, say, Reuters.
Yeah, I think Reuters is fairly reliable.
But, I mean, Wired, maybe it's my generation, my age, but I would think of, I don't know, Wired just sounds like a website. It's clearly not from what you're saying. It's clearly not just a website. Is it a reporting agency of some kind?
Well, a lot of journalism is done online now.
Yeah.
But I think they used to do magazines.
Yeah, well, I don't suppose there's any clear definition where the boundary lies, because journalism can be anything from basically bloggers through to the kind of people that I was just referring to that go into war zones and report on. But I suppose, as with the political campaigning situation, there's always going to be some money behind an organisation.
There's a lot of organisations, though, that do make an effort to be transparent where their money's coming from.
What do you think of the BBC in terms of neutrality?
I think sometimes... Oh, and I'll get onto a specific article as well. There are some issues where, although you may say, oh, journalists should be neutral and this, like there are some issues where really taking one side is, or ignoring that one side is very clearly in the right, is kind of overstepping that.
It might be, as an example, you wouldn't necessarily want to present the Nazis' viewpoint as equally valid to...
That doesn't tend to happen, although it did very slightly happen in an article that I'm going to reference.
Okay.
But it happens quite a lot with climate change, as I've mentioned.
Yes, absolutely.
Just like actual facts where the data is concerned, and people, and the other guest just fires back with, well, I feel like this is what it is, so it's that.
Yeah, it makes me laugh though, and people don't seem to realise it as well when they give an opinion on something and say, I don't know if this is true, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
And it's like, is it really helpful to even say what it is you're about to say then? Because you're purely speculating as though you think it's true.
I'm just going to see if I can find the article that I'm specifically talking about that might give you an idea of... It only happens sometimes. Generally, the BBC are pretty reliable.
Yeah.
And they get a good balance.
But they were accused very much of being anti-Brexit early on in the proceedings, weren't they?
Well, that's just because the facts tend to support... It's just the sort of thing of, oh, we brought experts on that say that Brexit will be terrible for the UK.
That was the whole thing, wasn't it? Michael Gove's kind of, we've had enough of experts.
Just sort of like, well, the facts are based around expert opinions.
We've had
ideally.
enough of dicks as well, but you're still there.
It'll be an older article. Yeah, they might have removed it. I don't want to just do it from memory. I swear it was a Europe-based thing, though. Sorry.
That's the thing. I mean, people worry about. I was going to say, do you think there'll be another world war in our lifetime? But it's like there already is.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different kind of war now.
Definitely. Whilst it does kind of sound like a conspiracy theory, there is evidence to support it. The Russian government is behind a lot of really shady things, funding the Trump campaign.
But that's in essence that's capitalism in action, isn't it? Because the entire planet is essentially working on a marketing footing and attempting to break up the competition. And do you know what I mean? It's the power is in the one that has the most.
This is why we
stable
have,
company,
like campaign spending regulations, but still through loopholes and etc. people overspend on it.
I wonder what's going to happen, because I mean things can't continue ad infinitum the way they are. Is there going to be a gradual change, or is it going to be the sort of thing that gets more and more extreme until there's a violent revolution?
I don't know really, because people are kind of a lot of violence going on already.
I mean, if polarization is the main weapon, what is the upshot of that? Because you can't get any much more kind of polarized than 54 and 50 against.
Yeah, I guess, but it wasn't that different a split with the independence referendum, and whilst there was a little bit of jibing and there's still loads of stickers up saying yes around our area.
I think. Well, I don't think they did disappear mostly. I think they started going up again because of the hope of an Indie Ref 2.
But there wasn't the same level of polarisation in Scotland. And I know there's less people, but I think it's that it's gotten to the point with Brexit where it is life or death.
Yeah. Do you think Scots are less nationalistic than the English?
Well, here's the thing with Scottish nationalism, as it's generally described. Well, first of all, Scotland isn't really currently a nation in its own right.
Well, nor is England.
No, but it's where most of the power is concentrated, and a lot more people there.
Yeah.
Generally, I tend to think more often as Great Britain as being
I do notice, and yeah, exactly. I do notice a lot more when that faux pas is made.
Yeah, I've never seen Scotland conflated with Great Britain.
No, and it's quite common for people to refer to Britain as England.
Yeah,
not here so much.
Here as well, I've seen it. English people referring to it as just England.
But you can kind of, I don't know. It doesn't seem as in the football world. Maybe it is more.
I guess, but
it doesn't seem as kind of vitriolic.
Yeah.
Maybe because we do have a different outlook on immigrants generally.
Yeah, there is also the thing of, whilst I think historically Scotland did have a brief colonial period, wasn't really successful, and I think that's why they ended up joining up with England in the end.
Right.
Well, part of the reason.
I think there's probably still a little bit.
There's that idea of, we used to rule the world. We were once number one.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, and I think maybe America is a long way behind on that path, but it's a similar path that there was global dominance at some point, and a lot of people not still think there is, but still think that way.
The world
that
isn't so
superiority.
much based on.
It's not empirical anymore.
No, it's not really. Steel isn't the thing that, swords don't run the world, or guns and steel don't dictate your influence anymore.
Yeah.
Instead, America has a cultural presence almost everywhere. Like, interestingly, on our way back from Prague, we took a coach and stopped off at a German services. And the guy at the counter asked if we were American, because he'd only heard it from American TV English.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing when quite often when you hear people from different countries speaking English, they'll often do it with an American accent. If they've actually got over the initial kind of pollution, if you like, of their own accent from their own language, they're quite often more likely to speak with a slightly American accent than with a British accent. Do you know what's really weird, though? Is hearing, and it probably is. It's not racist because it's not meant as an insult. I just find it curious and humorous. Is to see a black person speaking French or Scottish, or like with a Scottish accent. It just seems. I find it humorous.
I'm guessing that's because when you've lived in Scotland, you've lived in mainly rural parts where most people are white. But if you're from Edinburgh, that's fairly common.
It's probably more because when I lived down south, obviously there was a mix of all different kinds of races, and they would either speak in their with an accent of their hometown. Like I knew a lot of people of Jamaican descent in Wellingborough where I lived, and they would speak with like a Jamaican twang, because it was still obviously in their descendancy, in their family, they still had that influence. But either that or it would be Cockney, because there was, there's been a lot more of that in London, the cosmopolitan kind of mix, if you like. But I think it is strange. Like, yeah, maybe you're right in that, not having lived in Scotland, it is strange to hear people who look to be of a different ethnicity taking on a local kind of accent. It's interesting that I find that humorous.
I guess, but it's just sort of realising those weird biases and just being like, well, it's just normal. You get used to it because it's happening. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's horrific.
What?
I just noticed that article on a sabotage suspected after the cable car cord was severed. Vandal seems to have deliberately cut the cable on a mountain gondola.
That's wonderful.
That's part of journalism, though, I think sometimes, is to put fear into people. To kind of drum up a kind of... Because you don't get that much positive press.
No, well... tends to be that anger...
Almost like shock cells.
...is the most influential emotion, so... if something makes you angry, you're more likely to...
I suppose the other thing as well is that if you see two headlines, one of which is some really good news about something and one of which is some really bad news about something else, from a personal safety point of view, you're probably going to feel naturally inclined to find out about the bad news thing in case you need to be aware of something. It's like a danger kind of aspect.
Slightly, but I don't think in most of these cases people are that seriously worried about their personal safety. That's an aspect to it, but...
No, I mean, I'm talking about a subconscious kind of bias towards that rather than anything, like, oh, I really need to know about this typhoon in China in case it gets here. It's more like, I don't know, there does seem to be I suppose, well, it's maybe not the same thing, but when people go to see horror films, is it really nice to see people being murdered and
No, but not everyone likes horror films.
No, but people who do,
That's a thrill thing. I don't think people people don't enjoy reading news articles. Most people that like horror enjoy.
I'm sure that some people do.
Okay, they enjoy, being informed and stuff, but people don't. It's not fun.
But I'm sure there are a lot of people that wouldn't admit to it as well, that they are excited by the negative sensationalism that they're kind of bombarded with by some of the media. Otherwise, tabloids wouldn't get a shoe in. They wouldn't get a chance, because there is this kind of fascination with overhype.
I guess. It's just sort of, it's flashy and it's sensationalist. It grabs your attention.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Often decent journalism doesn't. Just quickly, since it's on the BBC homepage, have you heard anything about Jeffrey Epstein?
Not before. I noticed his name on the news today. I think it reminded me of a name of somebody else. I'm sure there was a. Was it not something to do with the Beatles? There was an Epstein. Was that not the fifth Beatle or something?
I don't know, but
anyway,
that has nothing to do with anything.
I know that, but that was why that was the only reason that name came up for me.
Okay. Basically, evidence surfaced that he'd been taking underage children, I'm just going to say fucking children because that's what they were, to his mansion, I think on a island that he owned or something, and that loads of powerful people had been there, particularly Trump, and I think Bill Clinton had been there as well.
Right.
Well, been evidence of them being particularly chummy with him, so it's quite possible that he had basically given them children to fuck.
Right, where did the original report come from that he'd done this, that he'd taken the children there? Or is there evidence of that?
Right.
Or a report of that?
There might be more info in here.
Because I noticed the thing there says how conspiracy theories spread.
Well, the conspiracy theories are... Basically, it's been reported that he's committed suicide in jail because he's been arrested for this.
Right, okay.
So, presumably an investigation's been going on into this, and charges have been laid against him. The question is whether it would indict other people that he'd possibly involved in basically sort of a child prostitution ring, except the children aren't being paid. That he'd involved Trump. The conspiracy theories about him allegedly committing suicide in jail is someone else could have killed him, because now, once he's dead, you can't really indict anyone else.
Is this guy, this Epstein?
Because he has dirt on a lot of people.
Is he a particularly rich, powerful person, or was he?
Well, he owned a mansion, so presumably.
Right. Because, I mean, it does potentially throw a little different light on the theory earlier that if you've got a certain amount of money, you can pretty much do anything. Clearly, there are some things that you can't do.
Well, they got away with it for a long time.
Yeah. But if money was all powerful, he would still be getting away with it.
Well, here's the thing. This is why there's conspiracy theories spreading, that also potentially the royals are involved in this, because I think something circulated recently about Prince Andrew being involved in this.
I thought I saw something about that, yeah.
That they could have had him killed and make it look like he killed himself, because he wasn't on a suicide watch. That's
the difficult thing is, see, when I see a headline like that, it says, how conspiracy theories spread after Epstein's death. The immediate thing that it makes you're curious about is what the conspiracy theories were. And I'm not really into conspiracy theories, but I recognise that is a curiosity that I have.
The thing is,
but there are a lot of people who even search out conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And they will believe some of the stuff that's been...
With this, I would say... I'm not saying that necessarily happened because there's not been evidence of it yet, but, I would really hope that there's some sort of investigation into his suicide, because it would be very convenient for a lot of wealthy, powerful people.
Yeah. So, but I suppose in that situation, it's faced with, well, who could safely... Because anyone who becomes involved in what could be a legitimate and thorough investigation is suddenly going to be at risk, aren't they? If there are a lot of powerful people that don't want a proper investigation to take place. I mean, they might be able to stop it happening in the first place, but if it did go ahead, if somebody started investigating properly and things were likely to come out, there'd be a lot of rich and powerful people that would benefit from them disappearing as well.
Yeah, I guess, but the thing is, him committing suicide has a sort of right level of, it's plausible.
Yeah.
Given his situation.
You might have thought shit.
Well, he might have realised that he's a genuinely shitty human being. Another fun story about him. On his private ranch, he tried to get scientists to basically make a new evolution of the human race by artificially inseminating his workers.
I have to ask you, when you say another fun story about him, where did you hear this story?
I don't know specifically. Thing, but it comes from memory.
Bearing in mind that our podcast is potentially a form of journalism.
Kind of, but they've talked to the scientists.
Who have?
Journalists.
Okay.
It's kind of inconvenient to just go, I'll save that for later, because I don't know when I'm going to bring things up.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
But I suppose that's the kind of scrutiny that a journalist should be under, isn't it?
Yeah, but that
we're sitting talking about it. We're kind of... You're eavesdroppers on an informal chat. As with everything that we say or do, don't take it as gospel. But these things do get talked about, and we don't publish ourselves as a news platform.
No.
But you know what I mean? There is that kind of... Well, I think there has to be a level of healthy scepticism. I mean, it's an interesting story. Like you say, it's a fun story.
He basically tried to ask scientists whether he could... Because he seemed to think that he had amazing genes or something. Artificially inseminate loads of women to...
Oh, hang on a minute.
Create the next evolution of the human race.
This is ringing a bell with me.
Caliban, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it then.
Oh, right, okay.
That's the level of fucked up you're dealing with here.
Well, I blame Shakespeare then.
And the fact that loads of rich and wealthy people are this chummy with him either shows that they have very bad judge of character.
I suppose the thing that kind of worries me a bit is that when you talk...
they're bad characters
when
themselves.
you get that powerful, when you get that rich and you get that much influence, there must be, of necessity, a very different perspective on history and the human race in general. I mean...
Yeah.
To think along those lines and to potentially have influence over the future of the human race.
You get quite a big ego building up there, don't you?
I suppose to everyone else it might seem like ego, but I'm trying to imagine it. I'm trying to put myself in that person's shoes with that much.
It's that
power.
idea of legacy, I suppose. And that
it's really difficult to imagine it sitting in this house doing this podcast, I mean, to a certain extent, not that we would have influence over the people that are listening to us, but you kind of do. Every person you speak to, you have a certain amount of influence over. People do listen to you.
My philosophy, you should really consciously think about the impact you're leaving on the world.
Especially when you do some of those really potent farts.
Yes, because you're contributing to climate change.
Yeah, but that gas is still going to be there, even though it's inside my body. I'm not going to blow up like a balloon just to save the planet.
I guess.
Because it's not going to work. Essentially, as soon as I die, that's what happens, isn't it? In the morgue, cadavers just like fart.
It's a pretty embarrassing death because a lot of people shit themselves when they die.
That took a very different turn, didn't it? So, what was his first name, this Epstein?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey!
Please stop making light of a really fucking horrible human being.
Why? I mean, is that not what they deserve, to be made light of? He's a financier.
I guess, but it doesn't really do much for the victims.
Okay. Sex trafficking. Indeed. So there's speculation that there's a lot of high up people. Prince Andrew groped a woman.
To
allegedly. That's what this article says. I'm not pointing fingers here.
He has famous friends.
Although he may have.
To Trump, Clinton, and Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
Which possibly involves them in what he was doing. It might not, but it's worth investigating.
Yeah.
But now that he's dead, it's a lot harder to.
Yeah.
And this does happen, especially as this is saying here, a lot in other countries, particularly Russia, where people mysteriously disappear or off themselves.
Well, this happened in Britain, actually. There was a Russian spy that quite a few years ago, I can't remember who, I think he might have been a doctor or something. But he mysteriously died, whether he committed suicide or something. But he at that time, he was in a particularly sensitive position. I can't remember who it was. Maybe some of the listeners might remember, but I remember at the time thinking that why what I mean, people it's the same sort of thing as these like ridiculous situations we've got in Parliament. People see these things happen and think, why is this allowed to continue happening? But people like us have no power over it. We have no say, really. We can't change
We have our vote. Well, I don't.
We have our podcast.
Still.
We are weak.
Yeah, we have our influence. We can talk to other people. We can post things online. That's about it.
But we're just one in a almost 8 billion crowd. Really.
Yeah.
We're just a single amoeba.
But
in a giant organism.
Right? Amoebas aren't.
No, I know.
But you can feel very small, and within the world, as Tim Minchin says, you're an insignificant bit of carbon.
Tim Minchin
within the universe. Yeah. I think he said ignorant bit of carbon, but both are true. It can feel like you have no power. And that comes to, again, talking about why is power so sought after?
I think the difficulty for me is that we live in our world, our bubble, if you like, our what we think of as normal life, and we would like to think that the rest of the human race would have a right to that kind of level of, don't know. I'm just because there's another article just put up in here: Perv Busters fight crime on the New York subway, and that brings to mind the idea of I've seen it before, reports on people basically rubbing themselves up against strangers on underground trains, crowded underground trains.
Yeah.
And you think that's a very different kind of mentality from what we consider to be normal. But there's a lot of people that are not even necessarily deliberately shitbags, just their normal is very different to our normal. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
People that live in dangerous areas, or have been surrounded by sort of gangland crime. We've got a fairly safe and sheltered existence where we have our family life, if you like. If you like.
Sheltered from some dangers, but...
We get to see about a lot of it on the news. But
I mean, we still have a lot of problems that do affect us.
Mm. We get to visit dangers, if you like.
Yeah. It's not people stabbing us or...
No, but I've lived in dangerous places.
Yeah.
And you do just get on with it because you don't really have any other choice, you know.
Yeah, well, this is the thing about when Russia has several times tried to assassinate spies in the UK.
Mm.
Allegedly. But like, there's no way those two Salisbury guys weren't here to assassinate people.
Hi, Vlad. If you're listening.
World famous spy.
No, Vladimir.
What?
Vladimir Putin.
Oh, right. It's sort of that, like, well, what are you going to do about it? Go to war with Russia, because no one wants that.
In the end.
In the past, that's what you would do, but...
I tend to get to the point where I especially after I've had a beer, I think, you know, the best thing for me personally, the way I feel most kind of satisfied is to just be, you know, like the kind of mentality of the punk movement in the 70s, where you just like sort of just rage against it, just call them out.
Yeah, you can do that. Call the problem out whenever you can. And this is why we can't make the shit that's happening normal.
Mm.
Because
this
really shouldn't be.
This is where I think... and obviously I'm biased because I'm a musician, but I think art has the upper hand here, because I think you can influence a lot more people through stuff like, I mean, you know, like Anarchy in the UK, Sex Pistols in the 70s had a massive influence on the political kind of environment, if you like. I think it's a powerful tool to reach people with, you know. And I think that.
Well, yeah, express yourself, which is what we're doing now. But, you know, you can help people like every day.
What should we do? Maybe we should do something about it.
Yeah,
as a podcast, maybe we should tackle the world. Maybe
well, that's kind of what we're trying to do in general. Just talking about it does help.
Oh yeah, Colin Clark. I brought him up and digressed, didn't I? Did you know? You know, he basically he was brown nosing Theresa May and basically votes for everything that the Nazi wing of the Tory party kind of want, even though his constituency don't.
I checked his parliamentary voting record. He's never voted against the government.
No, and do you know what? He has been promoted to Under Secretary for Scotland by Boris Johnson.
Of course, he fucking has. This is the thing about party politics as well.
But he's going to lose his seat next time.
It really isn't in the spirit of democracy. Because it's all about doing what's best for the party rather than what's best for someone's constituency.
Do you know what I really enjoy?
Or for the country.
What's that guy's name? The Welsh guy that used to do the morning shows on Radio 4. I think he does LBC stuff now.
I don't know.
Is it Hugh Davis? Is that his name?
Oh, Hugh Edwards?
Hugh Edwards, yeah. I love seeing him basically make politicians very uncomfortable, just the way he just dissects them. Sometimes I can feel a bit uncomfortable listening to it, and I think, oh, you're being a bit of an arsehole. But
Jeremy Paxman's great as well.
Yeah, definitely. See, they're good journalists to me. That's real journalism.
Aside from the tabloids, and this is because...
Vermin.
This is because we actually have laws on what you can report on TV. Our TV journalism is actually really fucking good.
Do you know, you're right there. Because, I mean, even when you look at the satire shows, like you said, you mentioned The Last Leg, the quality of the TV coverage of and journalism across the board, we're not just talking about political stuff, but I like a lot of the travel journalism that goes on.
Yeah. But to be honest, those late night shows that report on the news are some of the best journalism now, because
absolutely
they're doing something else rather than using your anger. They're using comedy to try and get your attention, which helps a lot, and it also helps make you feel a little happier at the end of hearing the news.
I'm actually glad that newspapers are
but also aware.
Slowly becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I don't see, when I spent my almost 10 years driving taxis, you know, I was exposed to so much tabloid bullshit. People, myself included, that read The Sun every day. I remember there was a time that I used to go and buy 30 copies of The Sun every day for a fortnight because there was tokens for free Blackpool Pleasure Beach rides in
that's
them.
banned in Liverpool.
What, The Sun?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's because of Hillsborough.
If that's true, which I want proof of.
They still have the Daily Mail, which is kind of a bit of like...
Is that true? Banned by what? Are we talking bylaw or just general?
I'm guessing like the mayor of Liverpool, whatever council runs it.
But, you know, it really annoyed the fuck out of me that News of the World basically got shut down, didn't they? Liverpool Football Club have banned it from their stadium.
Yeah, they've had really bad coverage of the Hillsborough disaster.
Yeah. Well, The Sun's just vermin.
I think a lot... I don't know, is that a thing that the banned from press conferences as well at the stadiums?
Well, it will make a big difference. It will make a big difference for sports coverage perspectives. And I know a lot of people read papers specifically for the sports section. We're not really into sports that much, but I know a lot of people, first thing they'll do is turn to the back pages for the sports news. So if they can't get any sports news on two of the biggest clubs in the Premiership, then that will be...
Yeah, well, is that a big thing where they sell the newspapers at football stadiums? Because it is saying here that they've rid themselves of the paper entirely.
I mean, yeah, but the thing I mentioned, which may be a much bigger thing, is that their reporters are banned from all press conferences because they won't then have access to the news on the sport that they need to report on.
Oh, Jesus.
They basically lie.
Sun are really fucking horrible, aren't they?
There was this whole thing, I can't remember how long ago it was. News of the World was the Sunday paper run by the same sort of company, if you like. It was basically the Sun, but it was the weekend version, the News of the World. And they were notorious for having this whole sensationalist thing going on. And I think they lost a court case because there was all this proof of there was a load of reporting that went on based on stolen voicemail recordings or something, and something happened with a schoolgirl or a teenager that went missing, and I can't remember what it was. There was something in the reporting. They'd had access to some answer phone messages, which they shouldn't have had because they'd hacked somebody's voicemail. And they were publishing things in this story that that affected the case. They made the police think that this girl was still alive when she was actually already dead or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, they got taken to court and they basically had to close the paper down because... for publicity purposes, and it would have cost him so much. And all he did was opened The Sun on Sunday to replace it, which the News of the World essentially was anyway. He basically just shut down the News of the World paper, and then the next week, The Sun on Sunday appeared.
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch's an interesting character.
He's a cock.
Yeah, he's a borderline monopoly in a lot of places, I think. He did try to buy up Sky, didn't he?
Is he Australian?
Yeah.
Nothing
he started his...
significant in that.
What?
There's nothing significant in the fact
right,
that he's Australian. It's just...
He started his whole media thing there, and then I think went over to the UK, and I think he owns Fox News still, I think. Well, I think Disney bought
He doesn't own Sky, does he?
Disney bought Fox, didn't they? He was going to buy it, but he was stopped because I think that would mean that he'd have a monopoly.
Disney bought Fox. There was another whole deal that went with something to do with Comcast.
Oh, yeah. America's got loads of problems with their internet providers and shit.
Oh yeah, they've got they've done away with net neutrality, haven't they?
Yep.
Fuckers.
And follow the money. Guess where that came from? All the rich cable companies.
Again, I don't get what's in it for them apart from money and power. But like to me,
that's
money and,
everything.
Yeah, but that's the thing. To me, money and power aren't everything. It's like,
yeah, but they still have. A lot of these people probably still have families. It's just they don't have to worry about paying the bills on top of that.
Yeah.
They
but
can
you can have a lot.
to
You
give
can have a
them
lot less money and power and still not have to worry about paying the bills.
expensive holidays.
Yeah, but I mean, I've had periods of my life where I've not had to worry too much about the bills because I've
you not had to worry too much, but still likely been problems.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just on a different level. When you're talking about millions, like what happens on the stock market is going to be
these
important
people
to you.
barely work. Like they'll read their fucking accounts. That's their work.
So what's the point? What do they do? You can't play tennis all day and sunbathe. Well, you can, but it's like, what's the meaning of life to you then?
Well, they can write books. They can do what they want. They're free to do what they want. They don't have to really work with what they want because
they're not really, though, are they?
Well, they're free to do what they want.
Free.
You've been sold this narrative, I think, that money can't buy you happiness.
No,
but it can.
You're assuming that I have a sympathetic view of their situation. What I'm saying is, I don't see why they bother. It's like I know they do, and to me, they don't seem to have any more freedom than you or I.
They can.
Everybody has their own constraints. I mean, they value power, and to me, that's their own punishment.
They can afford to go where they want, really.
So what? What does that do for your actual personal fulfillment and happiness? If you know you're a shit,
it just means that. Well, first of all, a lot of these people don't know they're a shit.
Well, they fucking should. They get told enough. I mean, Rupert Murdoch certainly does.
They're disconnected from it, though.
Yeah. Just arrogant tossers. I'm not advocating for their situation at all. I don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying I think they're the ones falling for the myth if they think that their lifestyle is so good. I mean, today and yesterday, the amount of fun that we've had as a family. Let's just think about how much enjoyment we get out of life as a family. Do these people really enjoy that much out of their life?
Right, so recently you've been doing a big spring clean. The camera's just gone. You could, if you were that rich, you could afford to have that done every day by someone else. And if you didn't give a shit about that person's welfare, then you wouldn't give a shit about it.
But I wouldn't get the fulfillment out of achieving that for myself.
On a giant pile of money.
What's the achievement? What's the personal fulfillment in that?
What do you achieve? What's your personal fulfillment? They can still have what we have, but they don't have to worry about paying bills.
It sounds like you value their lifestyle more.
No.
Like it sounds like you think that what they've got is worthwhile having.
I mean, it would be better than having to struggle, really.
But without a struggle, how do you ever know you've achieved something?
Well, there is still some. The only struggle doesn't have to be a financial one. You don't have to work to be fulfilled. This is the lie. That you have to be constantly doing something. Because you do this podcast, and you've only made like pennies off of it.
I haven't made anything off of it.
Well, exactly.
It's cost us.
Yeah, exactly.
But we've got the freedom to do that for fun, for the fulfillment of
But you
what
enjoy
we get
it.
out. Yeah, exactly. That's more important to me.
Yeah, these people can do that, but really the cost of it would be a fraction, like a really small fraction of the income that they make. And then they don't
so
even
would they
have
bother if it was that easy? Would they bother?
Yeah. Well,
if you could just get somebody else to do it, who'd probably be a lot more professional at it.
Yeah, they can afford big production values, I guess, as well.
But you know what I mean? To me, I think
Afford to
sometimes
advertise it.
I think if you have to work hard at something, I think it's more of a reward sometimes than just being able to pay somebody else to do it.
Well, they're not. They had the freedom, basically, to not have to have a job. You don't have the freedom to just quit your job as a musician because you would run out of money.
No, but to me, this is the essence of it. The difference would be if I had to put on a concert where there was something really difficult to play. Would I prefer to spend hours a day practicing so that I can perform it brilliantly on that day? Or if I had loads of money, I could just pay somebody else to do it?
I think you're going back to me saying paying someone else to clean for you.
Yeah, I must admit, I think
They're not paying someone else to go through their struggles for them.
I suppose
They
the thing
just
is,
have a lot less struggles to go through.
I would choose. I suppose if money was no issue, I would choose certain things that I would happily pay other people to do, so that I have more time to do stuff like the
Stuff that
podcasting,
you enjoy.
the music stuff. But there's not, to some extent, part of it is about just adjusting my mindset, because I just as much enjoy listening to music and washing up if I put myself in the right mindset for it.
Right, but wouldn't you rather have a dishwasher and just
You still got to load the thing.
just enjoy the music whilst you're doing something?
I feel a bit guilty sitting down just listening to something.
Well, that's because
I've been brainwashed to feel like I should be working all the time. I'm a pro.
Not necessarily, but it's just sort of you actually have a very decent work ethic.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're a hard-working person. A lot of these people.
I'm not sure how the fuck that happened. I was a junkie. No, I wasn't a junkie, but I was a waster.
Yeah, but
up until my 20s.
Probably one of the main reasons that you stopped was, well,
Because of my ethics.
Yeah, under your financial situation, you'd die if you kept doing it. A lot of rich people can afford to take all these drugs and still be fucking rich and happy.
It's chasing a dragon, though. It's like,
I guess, but
that was half of the problem, I think, when I was taxi driving, was I had easy access to cannabis. So it was easy to become numbed all the time. If you've got easy access to whatever you think you might want, how do you then choose what you want? What do you make your goal in life if you can achieve anything, literally, with the money that you've got and the power that you've got? How do you? I mean, it's difficult enough for us to make
a
our
fucking
own
space program because
I suppose
no one's done that before.
Yeah.
Well, not no one's done that before, but like no one's gone to Mars before.
Yeah.
So you go, I'm going to put people on Mars. That's what you do when you got loads of fucking money.
See, I'd be like, if I was Elon Musk, I'd be thinking, yeah, but I want to go. I don't want to like put other people there. I want to go.
Yeah, Elon Musk is an example, and I know there are problems with him. that I have seen. Elon Musk's an example of someone who, when he got everything that he wanted, because he was a partner in PayPal, he didn't just sit around and lounge around the pool.
Is that how he made his...
That's how he made a lot of his money. He was one of the founders of PayPal, I think.
See, this is what... I saw a graduation speech with Tim Minchin earlier, which I think he gives 9 or 10 life lessons, and one of them is it's pretty much all luck.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, you can do a certain amount to kind of enable luck to come your way a bit more, but at the end of the day, you can be working your arse off every day and not ever make anything out of it.
Understanding that as well, there's a lot of luck in the situation you're born in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because if you'd been given a loan of $1 million from your father, I'd bet you'd be in a lot of a different situation than you are now.
Possibly. I could be in a worse situation. Actually, that's an interesting one when people win big on the lottery, and that idea of how they cope with it, and because it's easier to be in a situation, I think, like I'm in now, than to have had. I mean, there's the quote from the James song, "Sit Down." You know, if I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. You know, it's like you've got to know how to handle that, and how do you. If you've had that wealth given to you at birth, you kind of also handed the ethics with which to manage it, and the skills with which to manage it.
A lot of these people that are born into wealth, to cope with that, you're kind of educated in a way where you're taught to say, "Oh well, I deserve this because I'm from such and such a family, and my parents worked hard for this." Or
now you're sympathising with them.
No, here's the idea of how they're okay with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the same with anything in there. Whatever's normal to you has always been normal. That's because the way of life.
Yeah, some people do give it away where they can and be charitable, but a lot of people, it's just sort of...
Must be a bit of a mindfuck being somebody like Bill Gates, though.
Yeah, definitely.
To have been born into a world that was so very different, and for your contribution to that world to have made such a massive change. But then I think in his position, I might also be tempted to look at the world and think, well, yeah, but if it hadn't been me, somebody else would have done the same thing. I was just lucky enough to be the one that was involved at the time.
I think with that sort of attitude, especially if you're using that for the contribution you've actually made, that someone else would do it if I didn't. Like, they weren't always.
Now I feel fucking guilty as hell.
Why?
Because I didn't write something as amazing as Imagine, or, you know, because I could have written loads of songs that could have had a massive influence on people, and I haven't.
You've still got a lot of time left to write something amazing if you really want to.
Oh, thank you. I might just do that.
You know, I've started writing books at my age, which, you know, historical figures have done, and whilst they probably won't get published...
Well, I'd written brass band scores before your age.
Exactly.
But I've done fuck all with... Well, I've not done a lot with my time since, apart from Raise a Wonderful Family, obviously, but, you know... Yeah. So I'd not done much besides that, but to me, that's... I think...
That's a main tenet of your life.
What is?
Family.
Definitely. Which is weird. Feels like I'm making up for something.
Don't try to read into your happiness.
Why not?
Read into your depression. Because you don't need to solve your happiness, do you?
No, but I like thinking about it because it makes me happy.
I guess.
I like the thought of being happy. Depression can go fuck itself.
Right, I want to...
We're nearly at 2 hours.
Yeah, going back to journalism, we've kind of gone on a...
Bollocks? rant?
I don't know. We seem to start the podcast with a bit of a thing about rich people. But
We want to get a rich person on.
We won't.
Colin Clark, come and defend yourself.
Colin Clark isn't rich. At least not rich. He makes like probably 100,000 a year. But
I just want somebody to argue with. We should get Ben back on again. Sorry, carry on.
Anyway, right.
Sorry, Ben.
The whole narrative, and a lot of the thing about journalism is these narratives that are interesting. You know, it's trying to make a story. Humans like to see patterns. They like to see stories. They like to make stories to make sense of the world.
No, pretty patterns, yes.
The thing about PC culture.
Politically correct.
Yeah. The thing is, really...
There's no such thing. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it doesn't actually happen that much. And when there's a big hoo-ha about, oh, someone got offended by this, it's just sort of like, nothing happened to that person. Yeah. Even if they said something horrendous.
It's like somebody's trying to make a mountain out of a molehill and failing miserably.
Yeah, it's just sort of... So one person got cancelled that's a horrific human being at one university. They're going to speak at one the next day. It's just, no one's going to cover, a university didn't ban this speaker.
Yeah.
Or...
I suppose, to go back to the whole sort of capitalist society, we've got to bear in mind that journalism, pure journalism, I suppose, is not the same. But the media is a corporate enterprise. Well,
that's the great thing about the BBC. It's not really, it's national.
But there's been a lot of criticism of the licence fee, and especially recently with the pensioners having that taken away, the freedom, the free licence fee taken away. And people saying that it's shit output and that you don't get your money's worth. It's like, I totally disagree. The BBC put great world-class content.
Thought-provoking entertainment that doesn't have to worry about what's selling and...
Yeah, I mean, they've had their problems, obviously, but...
They can make art without having to worry about whether it will get as many views as possible.
And I don't see why people...
who are find reality TV
of a certain age BBC should feel entitled to a free TV licence when, let's be honest, their age range are probably the ones that are most likely to be consuming that material live. And that brings me on to something which I noticed the other day, which was poor journalism in the extreme, was... I don't know, just the standard of journalism seems to be... I was talking. How dare you?
Sorry.
How very
related to what you were saying, because I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Go on.
Comparing streaming services to watching TV on a television set. It's like, do you not realise actually the vast majority of us stream stuff on our television sets?
I think, a lot of the stuff with journalism is, there's a lot of, I guess, I'm not sure if it's older writers or they're intending it for an older audience.
Yeah, the targeting.
Where they're not talking about from an understanding of the internet age.
Let's face it, how much do younger people buy newspapers?
Probably like one...
No, I want to know the exact numbers. No, I didn't say that, did I?
Okay, wait. But there's also this narrative of millennials are lazy and entitled and killing all the industries that...
Well, you're not a millennial anyway.
No, but... Millennial will...
I think your sister is. Your older sister, isn't she?
Just. My oldest
I'm an X-man.
Is just a millennial. Technically, Mum's on the borderline of millennial, so depending on what definition...
It's such bollocks, isn't it? It's just divisiveness.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you a Y or a Z?
I'm Generation Z.
What's...
Generation Y would technically be millennials, but they... I guess came of age around the millennium.
And said why?
So millennials became a catchy term for them.
What are they going to do now then? They've run out of letters.
I don't know.
It's all bollocks, isn't it?
They'll come up with new names because the baby boomers were in Generation W.
That's true.
Just your generation didn't do anything significant.
What the fuck are you talking about?
What? No, but like, there hasn't been a nickname for Generation X that people have come up with. You could be
so what's the Generation Z nickname?
Nothing yet, but like...
But you haven't done anything significant.
Right, the oldest people in Generation Z are, I think, 22.
No, I think Generation X tend to be referred to as the forgotten generation because we were shat on royally by society.
I guess. You could be the MTV generation.
And I blame the baby bummers for... Oops. I would edit that out, but I can't be bothered.
Baby bummers could fuck the earth in the ass.
But, I mean, even then, you can't really... I mean, you can blame them, but they were operating from their perspective, and they'd just come out of the back end of 2 world wars. So, really, everything was on the up for them. Why would they have any reason to think that they were going to fuck everything in the ass?
In the end, let's just agree that it's kind of pointless separating people into these arbitrary groups.
That's a good idea. A wise decision, sir.
But they'll come out with something like, millennials are bad at DIY compared to baby boomers. Just sort of like, well, yeah, but...
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, using a phone's far more useful, and how many times have you had to explain to an elderly relative how to use their phone?
Well, it depends who you are. I mean, my mum knows how to text like a fucking ninja.
Okay, fair enough. But I've seen her try to book cinema tickets.
Oh yeah, she doesn't know what she knows. Yeah, she knows what she's doing, but she's no idea how she's doing it. Because like I was trying to explain the difference between text messaging, video messaging, Facebook Messenger, Skype, and she was like, I said to her, "Are you using Skype?" Because she was saying about video messaging something when we were trying to set up a Skype conversation. I'm like, "What app are you using?" And she's like, "I don't know. It just says video message." I'm like, but to me,
is it on Messenger?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just on my phone, on my screen. It's like, I've no idea. But see, to me, it makes a difference because I've made the mistake of sending picture messages through text rather than on Facebook Messenger. And you end up getting charges on your phone bill because picture messaging costs, but on Facebook Messenger it doesn't. So.
Pictures up through text messages. My phone just goes multimedia messages, something or other.
That'll be the settings. This will be a similar thing to when you can get data online abroad.
Oh, I think that just took a while to come through.
No, it didn't. I changed the settings. I had to phone up 3.
Yeah, it wasn't the settings on my phone, no. It was
the settings on your account.
Yeah,
I had to actually phone them up to enable it.
But I don't know how to access my own account on that thing. But
well, you'd have had to phone them because well, it's not your account technically; it's my account.
Yeah, so
I've got 4 mobile phones.
It's not my fault.
I've got 4 mobile phones. You'd have thought they'd have a family thing, but anyway, we're getting off journalism. I've got an interview to do with you.
Right, so there's there's narratives that people try to push that just aren't there, and then there's not paying attention to things.
Speaking of which, you're always trying to make out I'm a wanker.
Well, let's look at the data. How many times have you visited Pornhub?
Oh, just go fuck yourself.
I can look at your internet history on this thing, or have you wiped it clean? I'm gonna look.
Yeah, but I'm not a fucking baby boomer. You don't think I don't use an incognito window, do you?
Oh, you're smart. There we go. Just got you to admit you're a wanker.
So, generally I'm male, yeah?
What?
Generally I'm male, which kind of means there's a high likelihood that I am.
Women wank too.
Yeah, I know,
Everyone wanks.
This is not journalism, is it?
Fuck off. I can make it journalism.
A podcast report on
wanking happens. I'm reporting on the wanking. Quote of the year.
Did you finish your point about narratives?
Right. So, and this is kind of a manufactured thing where The PC culture thing.
Don't know why I'm giving you that funny look, because the camera's finished ages ago.
Yeah. People try to make it, everyone's so easily offended these days. Like, shut up. You get offended when I call you a fucking idiot, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah, gross and sexist, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. I don't know, I think it's just sort of, it's quite stressful realising how much of your previous existence was kind of a bit fucked up.
Previous existence?
Well, like, a lot of the phrases that you'd used, like, in your childhood or growing up, not really thinking about...
Are you talking about me specifically at the moment?
Not you specifically, but, people of your age. You probably have used them. Because
right, okay, so...
I've heard that... Well, you've said to me that you weren't aware of trans people until quite late.
Yeah, no, definitely. But doesn't it blow your mind that the likelihood is, then, that when you reach my age, you'll be in a similar situation?
Yeah, but the importance is, and there's been quite a backlash against this, because it's not fun to admit that you're privileged or that you have advantages that other people don't, and it's not fun to admit that...
I'm not as privileged as a lot of people.
No, but you privileged.
I am more privileged than a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I'd put myself kind of at the mid-range. I have advantages and disadvantages. But I don't know, actually just being born in the UK is probably fairly advantageous.
Yeah, well, we have a relatively decent human rights record,
So
all
far.
things considered, and that's a really fucked up thing to say, because we don't have a particularly decent human rights record, in my opinion, because I hold human rights to quite a high standard, because that's how my philosophy works. But, it's this backlash against having some humility and admitting that you've been ignorant about whole groups of people.
Yeah. Do you know what I think made a big difference to me, actually? And this is not, I don't think, anything to do with influence, because my granddad was very anti-American. And I've been around people who've been very anti... I've been around people, actually, when I was taxi driving. My boss at the time, his parents were up... they'd lived in South Africa for quite a while. They were white. And they were very negative about black people. And they didn't see anything wrong with the attitude that they had.
Right,
but they spoke about them as thieves and criminals, and that they were, they were dirty people, but they didn't see anything wrong with speaking about them like that. And I think I'm lucky enough to have moved around, and I think that makes a difference.
I think there's quite a serious problem with that in Africa, because recently watching, I think it's Ramesh Ranganathan's Misadventures, I think it's called. Basically, he goes to...
It's a good program, that.
He goes to countries that don't necessarily have the best press.
So I enjoyed that Zimbabwe one that we watched.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. There was a guy, and you can tell, he's a decent guy because he's trying to prevent poaching.
Yeah, that was a very similar kind of attitude.
Yeah, but he wasn't like talking about black people like they were criminals and thieves and stuff. But he was talking about Cecil John Rhodes, which is the namesake of Rhodesia, the precursor to modern Zimbabwe, as a hero, whereas to much of the black population in Zimbabwe, he's kind of a tyrant. I think pretty brutal towards the native population when he was alive.
Yeah, it is very much a perspectives thing, isn't it? Because, while I didn't agree with him, I could almost see what he was trying to say, but I just think he was mistaken. Or maybe it wasn't so much mistaken. I just think sometimes when people are coming across like that, they're maybe just not able to eloquently explain exactly what they mean, and it comes across as racist as a result.
I think this is another thing of people liking stories being told, and that's essentially what journalism is—a story.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, because even if it is taken as exactly what I said, that it's basically a diary, or it's a reporting of events. It's still not the actual event; it is your version of it.
There's a quite old narrative of white people bringing civilization and great technologies to various places like the Americas, Africa and Australia, even India, which seems a bit weird considering history. But
there was evidence of primitive kind of batteries, wasn't there, in some of these like Egyptian and ancient Greek cultures?
Well, here's the thing: they're quite often like the basis for civilization, so it's a little bit confusing that we're saying that we're the civilized ones now, and whilst it's admitted that we have a high level of technology right now, it's sort of, that doesn't give you the right to slaughter people in the name of science or advancement, because that's not going to help science or advancement. Conversations with these people would. It's clear.
These people?
Conversations with people that haven't really been in the best advantageous situation because of their geopolitical location.
Right.
Because, admittedly, particularly Africa and Australia, they haven't really gotten the best draw in terms of environment because it's very hot. There's a lot of infertile ground, and the animals aren't particularly friendly.
No.
The animals in Europe, or at least that were brought over from
what you just reminded me of?
Particularly friendly. Like horses and sheep and
we've watched these nostalgia programs about like the 70s and the 80s and stuff, and it reminded me of something which happened in the 80s, and this is related to journalism as well, actually. There was a lot of fear in the 80s, and I think it was deliberately engendered through advertising campaigns. The two specific things that I would have previously thought straight away of was the HIV scare, which was justified, and there was a public education program needed in that area, but there was also the whole kind of nuclear war thing going on, and what to do in the event of a nuclear war. But the other thing was there was a massive, and this was probably at a time when connections with Europe were being coming out of the 70s, and that was when the first referendum happened, when we voted to come into Europe. There was a massive scare campaign about rabies.
Oh, right.
Because the UK was famously at the time completely free of rabies as a disease. And there was this whole thing about... There was a whole thing about being really vigilant about making sure that animals didn't get into Britain from... Europe. They had to go into quarantine for months and stuff like this.
I mean, there was a whole, and I think it did cause quite a bit of racism about Ebola when that happened, even though the outbreak was fairly contained within Western countries.
But
whilst you should care about it because it's a horrible disease, you shouldn't really be caring about it out of worry for personal safety. You should be worrying about it because of empathy for your fellow human beings.
Looking back on that whole rabies campaign, I know they were talking about animals and stuff, but there was serious programs on TV, dramas about it, about people, an outbreak of rabies and stuff like that. It feels, looking back on it, like it was a deliberate... There were unpleasant undertones to it.
Yeah.
It was this killer kind of disease that we were pure from. And there was a potential for an invasion of this disease from the European continent. It's not nice, is it? It's that whole kind of...
Notice how probably we didn't really talk about that when we invaded the Americas with our diseases.
No. I feel like we should be drawing to a close soon. I'd like to make sure that we've covered everything that you want to cover as much as we normally do. Before I introduce a closing idea to the podcast.
The article that I was looking for. Now I can't actually find it, so whatever, take it with a pinch of salt if you want to. But I have definitely seen it, and I know it's definitely from the BBC. It was talking about white nationalism in Europe.
Right.
and how that's rising, and it's got like an online presence.
Mm.
So the journalist went to meet with one of these white supremacists, and they began their piece just by talking about how slick they were and wearing a suit and very professional.
Mm.
And it's just sort of this worrying thing that with the alt-right that it is really, and this is why I don't get why it's being... You probably don't get a lot of this because you're probably not within like internet culture as much. You're internet literate, but you're not within internet culture as much.
No.
It's being labelled a counterculture, like the 60s movement of peace and hippies and stuff.
Right.
Because it doesn't make any sense because they're the ones in fucking power. But anyway, they were talking about how slick they're being, in suits and stuff.
Mm.
And this was like when this has been going on for years, and there's been mass shootings inspired by it, and it's like meeting with a terrorist organization and saying, well, they had a very nice font on their letter.
Yeah. I think that particular instance that you brought up there makes me realise what I suppose the biggest value of journalism is that if there is a white nationalism or any kind of movement on the rise, without kind of remote information on it, the first we would know about it would be when they started becoming active around Inshore, maybe even Aberdeen at a stretch, places that we inhabit, without reporting, without finding out that information from other places and finding out the dynamics of it.
Also,
it would come as an instant shock.
About going to Prague, I mean, it's interesting, but also slightly worrying, because that was a communist bloc country.
Yeah.
Well, Czechoslovakia was, but then they separated soon after. I think just the year after.
So even now, though, that seems like that communist bloc thing was a lot closer than. I mean, back then, obviously, I was a lot younger. I think
that's the thing, the unknown.
It was a lot closer than. But we've been to Estonia, and
that's been. It was funny going into the museum because one of the items, I think, was just basically telling them this country's had the shit kicked out of it for hundreds of years. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of worrying considering the humanitarian implications of that. But
then at what point does an area stop becoming a country? Stop being a country,
When the borders change.
Yeah. But I mean, see if the USSR had continued in the form that it was for long enough, would all the internal borders, because I mean we knew of the Baltic countries and Czechoslovakia and Poland and East Germany as separate countries. At some point, would those borders have been eradicated and it just all became like, I don't think. See, I often think
it would be like NATO.
I don't think of the USA as lots of different countries.
No,
but they are states. Now, when you think of nations in terms of nation states, does that mean that they've just reached a further evolution in the political progress in that they would have at some point been regarded almost as separate countries, but they came together, united, and now...
What the USSR had was something called the Warsaw Pact. So that I think... I'm vaguely remembering history, so don't, rage in the comments if I'm wrong. Whilst they had their own borders, which included some places that are now countries in their own right, like Kazakhstan, or I think the Baltic countries would be included in this, and parts of Finland maybe. It was under an organisation branch, but there was still a very hard border around Eastern Europe.
Meow.
They're just going to brush over that. You can't see, but I'm face palming.
We've got to stop soon.
Yes,
We're off journalism.
I'm getting to
We're
it.
on 2.25 hours.
I'm getting to it.
And I've got to congratulate you.
I'm getting to it. Ooh, yes.
With your permission, but carry on.
Okay. They were still considered like separate countries within that. It was more like NATO, I think, vaguely. Because like, whilst we we have very close ties still to the United States, and especially during the Cold War we did, and to France, and that sort of community of countries.
Do you know what I find really difficult to get my head around? And it's probably going to become more and more relevant, especially as we're a kind of global community. I can't really... I mean, there's this whole thing... I know there's this steel issue, but there's also a big... it's almost like China and America are now more the kind of superpower rivals, not to the same extent, but the way that they were with the USSR.
Yeah.
They seem to be more of a threat to them. But for me, I find it really difficult thinking of Far Eastern countries as being as much of a threat because they're so far away, and it's not a logical thing to think like that. But it's just,
whilst China does have nuclear weapons, it's unlikely. Stop biting your nails. It's unlikely in most situations that they would actually use them. The thing is that the main scare is actually for rich and powerful people because they're building a new Silk Road, which is meant to be like a railroad across loads of Asian countries all the way to Turkey, I think.
Funnily enough, though, we're talking about that great hack thing, and we think of it in Western terms, but actually China's pretty much perfected that, haven't they? Controlling their population through the use of data.
Oh yeah, it's really fucking scary, to be honest.
I mean, that kind of came out of the blue, really,
Hong Kong,
for me.
Coming back to Hong Kong, I think it's Hong Kong. There've been loads of protests against the government. And you know how they had this facial recognition technology? Yeah. I mean, it seemed really fucking dystopian. I saw an article where a guy had hacked into his phone to try and disable the facial recognition technology. They were trying to shove his face onto it to get him to open his eyes whilst his phone scanned his face.
Yeah.
And then they realised that he'd already disabled it. So shoved him in jail.
Yeah.
It's fucking terrifying.
Welcome to the 21st century. Anyway, can we stop soon because I need a piss?
Okay. Right. Just basically don't believe everything you read and always ask questions. Just
I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to endow you with a greater sense of intellectual authority now, publicly.
Okay.
Would you like to announce your exam results, sir?
You can announce them for me, because...
Well, I can't remember. I know what they were, but did you want to do them individually, or...?
I got straight A's.
He's got 7 A's, isn't he a clever boy?
So that's 3 sciences, maths, English and German.
You're still a dick, though. But well done.
Fuck off.
We're going to have to bring this podcast to a close because I need a piss and I need to interview you about Prague for my Better Call Paul podcast.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, just quickly about going to Prague. The sort of graffiti that you see, it's quite interesting because there's that whole... sort of legacy about the Berlin Wall with there being loads of graffiti there.
Well, that's a teaser then.
And quite famously in Prague, there's John Lennon's wall. I don't think I saw that. But there's loads of... And it felt almost like a movie foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Of rival graffiti artists from communists and anti-communists and fascists and anti-fascists.
In a way they're a form of journalists, aren't they?
They're artists.
Artists are journalists too.
I think...
You need a piss too, don't you?
With the art thing, the journalism's trying to be close to reality, unless it's the fucking sun. Whereas the artist is trying to romance that. Ideally, journalism...
Unless it's realism.
Ideally, artists aren't. They're trying to view reality, but through a different scope rather than just plain as it is.
Yeah.
They're trying to make it look pretty and entertaining as
Right.
well, which is what journalism does well. It's kind of confusing, but it's not trying to be art when journalism does stuff. Whatever.
Come on then,
Anyway.
let's fuck off.
Yes, I've been Firebolt,
I've been the Orbiter.
and this has been Breaking Bollocks, episode 41.
Journalism.
It's been like an episode of the Bollocks Report.
Kind of has, hasn't it?
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.